The time is at hand.
From the crackhead capital of the world in Williamson, West Virginia, you are in Dark Places. My name is Junebug Fugit. Howdy. Well, it's summertime again, and it means all the sissies are crying about climate change again. It's summer, it gets hot. It's extra special for me this year, though, because my air conditioner in my car doesn't work, and it hasn't worked for years. But now, the air conditioner in the house doesn't work. So we have a bunch of little window air conditioners, and they're doing the best they can, but they're struggling.
This is Mr. Haunted with breaking news. Excavation has begun on a septic tank at a site in Ireland that authorities believe contains the remains of nearly 800 dead babies and children who died in a home for unwed mothers run by Catholic nuns. Many of the infant remains are feared to have been dumped in the cesspool known as the Pit at the former institution in the small town of Tuam, County Galway. Local historian Catherine Corliss told Sky News. Thank you, Sky News. In total, 798 children died at the home between 1925 and its closure in 1961, of which just 2 were buried in a nearby cemetery, her research found. Holy mackerels. What I'm trying to say is, this is tragic, but if you want haunted septic tanks, this is how you get haunted septic tanks. Thank you. That was breaking news.
Jimmy Pettinito, Mr. Haunted, newsman extraordinaire. Thank you, sir. This week on the show, we have Matrix Glitches, Part 4. You like the Matrix glitches, don't you? I like the Matrix glitches. It's kind of hard to say. This first story comes from Wayfarer. This happened back in college. I was driving home from my cabin in northern Wisconsin through the Indian reservation. There was a man on the side of the road, sort of limping along, and I pulled over and asked if he was okay. He said yes, he was fine. He just needed to get home because his wife decided she still loved him. They'd had a fight. I asked the man where home was, and surprisingly, it was the same city where I went to college, about 2 hours away. I offered him a ride. He didn't talk much. He was tired. When we got into town, he started giving me directions. Just down here, it's close, he said. Take a left at the lights. Okay, I said. Right here, he said, pointing. After the white truck. Here? I pulled into the driveway. Yes. Shut up, I said. What? He asked. He was grinning, like he knew what I was going to say next. I used to live here, I told him. You don't say. Yes, upstairs, apartment number 3. Yes, that's ours. Now he was smiling from ear to ear. Small world, he said. He thanked me for the ride and got out of my car, walked through the front door of my old apartment building. I know it was just a coincidence, but it was one of the strangest moments of my life. So was that him in the future? Weird. I used to live in a city of about 250,000 people, and I lived in the same house from the time I was born until I was about 18. My brother worked as a delivery driver for Panego Pizza at the time, and the night we sold our house, my brother ended up delivering pizza to the people that had moved in. He said he didn't say anything because he thought it would be creepy. Branderson says, I got a call from a police officer telling me that if I didn't pay some old fines within a week, he would come and arrest me. The total was $267.63. It was about 2 weeks before Christmas, so I was really sweating it. The very next day, I got a check in the mail for $267.63 for overpaid child support throughout the year. Craziest, most unexplainable thing I've ever had happen to me in my life. I was looking at the giant poster of Jordan on my wall, considering if I should take it down. Turned the channel and the person on TV said, "Jordan's got to go." It was a show about the country, but I took my poster down. This happened in early 2000 when I was working at a juvenile detention center in a small town in Oklahoma as a corrections officer. I was working nights at the time and went to work at 9 p.m. This one night, when I arrived for work, my supervisor looked confused and asked me what I was doing there. I said, "I work tonight." And he said, "But they said you called in a few hours ago saying that you were sick." I was a bit confused and said, "It must have been someone else, and they got the message wrong." After everyone else showed up for work that night, it was a bit more weird, but we carried on as usual and assigned everyone their places for the night. I went to work in the control room, where I usually work. The control room is the center of the prison that has direct control over the cameras, doors, phones, and everything. After I relieved the guard on duty and settled in for the night, I looked at the message that said I had called in. It said I called in at 6:50 and said I had gotten sick while out cleaning up after the storm. There had been a storm the night before, and it was a bit bad, but not anything that I had to go out to clean up. It was truly weird. The supervisor came into the control room about that time. He was also a friend of mine outside of work, so we started talking about it and how odd it was. I decided to call my wife at home and tell her about it while he was still sitting there. I picked up the phone and dialed. After 2 rings, a man picked up the phone in a raspy voice and said, "Hello." I did not know what to say for a few seconds. I looked at the phone to make sure I had dialed the right number, and I had. After a few seconds, the person said, "Hello," again in the same raspy voice. I said, "Hello, who is this?" "This is Taylor. Who is this?" He said. My head started spinning because my name is Taylor also. I said in almost a scream, "Where is Ann?" And he said, "Ann's in bed. Who is this?" I dropped the phone and told my supervisor to ring me out. I had to get home. I took off toward the door. I could hear Dave pick up the phone behind me and say hello. I ran to my car and drove home faster than what was legal, my mind racing the entire time. I busted through the door, and my wife was sitting watching TV and was shocked at me being home. I asked her who was there, and she said no one had been there. After a rather long talk with my wife, I went to call the prison to tell them what was going on, but the phone was dead. I went back to work and I came in. Dave was acting weird and asked me, "How are you doing this?" He told me when I left he picked up the phone and the person on the other end sounded like me. He kind of freaked out and hung up the phone. A minute later, he said he could see my car leaving the parking lot. I called back from home and asked what was going on. He said that I was a bit irate and said I was sick and did not feel like playing these games and was telling him to stop prank calling me, and hung up. After convincing him I had no idea what was going on, we went back to work. Later I found out that the phone line from my area had been knocked down the night before by the storm. This is absolutely the strangest thing that has ever happened to me. Gooch Grundle says, "Okay, here's my story, but first, 2 points of backstory. My parents lived about 90 minutes away from me in my old hometown. Often I would make a trip of it on Tuesday nights to see friends and then swing by my parents. We chose Tuesday night as none of the guys' SOs would object to hanging out during the middle of the week. Usually hanging out with my friends between 7 to 10 p.m. I would drop by real quick to see Dad after 10 p.m. The obligatory "I'm in town" and would be an awful son by not dropping by visit. Since I went back about every other week, it was nice to get the FaceTime with my dad. This was pretty frequent, especially during the summer. Since he was retired, he just watched tons of TV until the early morning hours. When dreaming, I know when I'm dreaming, and if I'm having a bad dream, I can make myself wake up. Or if I'm dreaming something funny, I will interact until I wake up. Essentially, I am able to control my dreams once I realize I'm in them. Been this way for the past 10 years or so. Kinda cool, except I have some crazy stuff happen in them, and then I wake up. So, linking these two items up, one evening after visiting my friends, I decided to drop by my parents' house. I usually walk through the garage, use my dad's key code, into the house, to the den where my dad watches TV. My mom would be asleep, so most of the lights would be out, except for the light from my dad's den. So I'm walking through the house, and I seem to be floating. As I get to my dad's den, I say hi. It's at this moment I realize, wait, something isn't right. Today isn't Tuesday. No way, can I be here? This must be a dream. At that point, the entire room, house, environment goes dark. Suddenly I'm in the dark space / room, looking at this ghoulish figure with a somewhat scared, shocked face. Like he realized I knew this was fake. It was like the curtain was dropped and I saw the puppet master. Making eye contact with him, he kind of looks like a clownish figure. Crazy teeth, pale face, weird clothes. Like a mix of Phantom of the Opera meets killer clowns from outer space. I only get a brief moment in this space with him before he also goes poof to vanish. After this, I immediately wake up, groggy, roll over, check my phone, see that it's 2:30 a.m., chalk it up as a crazy dream, and go back to sleep. The next day, I call my dad just to chit-chat and see how things are going. We're talking, and he tells me, last night I was watching TV. Next thing I know is you're standing in the doorway. I go by to ask you what you're doing there so late, and you just sort of faded away, like a computer graphic. Just bit by bit until you were gone. I figured it was time for me to go to bed. Instant knotted stomach. I asked, when was this? Oh, late. Not sure. Probably after 2 a.m. So I tell him my dream, and he just figures it's something we'll never be able to explain. Something from another realm. It freaks me out. Not sure if it was dark spirits or whatever. I wonder if there is something watching me or maneuvering my days. Pretty freaky. This always gives me chills when I think about it. My dad has since passed, but I still think about that day. To me, this just affirms the connection I have with my old man. Hope he has some answers now. And until then, I hope the ghouls stay away. Back when I was in 5th grade, I remember sitting in class about to take an exam. It was one of those where the teacher would write down the question and we would all write down the answer on our sheet. After about the 3rd question, I started to realize that I had already seen these questions in the same order and knew the answers. I honestly remember it being like Groundhog's Day, where I had this deja vu moment, like I had already sat through the test the previous day. I raised my hand and said we had already done these questions, and I got this dumbfounded look from the teacher and classmates. I looked around like, seriously, am I the only one realizing this? Oh really? The teacher says. What's the next answer? I went up and wrote the next several answers that just came to my head. He looked down at his test and verified the board and then canceled the test. I spent the rest of the afternoon with the teacher and principal being accused of compromising the test. The principal had him go through all his notes and lesson plans to see if he had briefed the test by accident in the past. They asked the other kids, and nobody else remembered. They all had crappy scores on the test. I somehow got a glimpse of the future, or my classmates pretended that they just never saw the test being briefed. A Dennis says, I have too many. I'll list a few. One day, while standing in the living room of a house I'd rented with friends, I heard my roommate bound down the stairs, as he usually did, and run into the kitchen, slide across the floor, and open the fridge. Being young then, too, I turned around to face the open kitchen to tell him to quit running like a little kid in the house, and was looking at an empty kitchen. A second later, he bounded down the stairs, ran into the kitchen, slid across the floor, and opened the fridge. When he turned around, he said, Whoa, what's wrong? Because I must have been as pale as a sheet. Number 2. When I was a kid, I had a record player. Yes, I'm old. Anyway, as kids' poorly handled records tended to do, my favorite albums developed scratches that caused the needle to skip here and there. One of the songs always had a skip in the same spot, and I got used to it. Fast forward to a year ago, out of nostalgia, I bought and downloaded the song from Amazon. Wanted to walk down memory lane. I was listening to it with a friend. Then the song skipped in the same spot. My friend heard it as well. I know she did, because when I heard it, I went berserk and demanded she tell me what she heard, if anything at all, to check my own sanity. She heard it. I replayed it. The skip was gone. Number 3. I have on several occasions dreamt of a person, place, or event within a month plays out in front of me precisely as I had dreamed. Number 4. I went to college in California at USC, but the summer before my first semester I did an enrichment program in England at Oxford University. However, before I left, USC held an East Coast orientation for freshmen. I was from New York, and I attended. While there, I made a friend whom I'd continue to be friends with when school began. Anyway, after orientation, I attended the program in England. While there, I made a lot of awesome friends and got very close to this one great girl. We had a blast. Upon returning to the States and settling at USC, I reconnected with the guy I had met at orientation. I couldn't believe my luck, as I just stumbled upon him while he blabbed on a payphone. Yes, I told you I'm old. Which was great because I had no idea if I'd ever find him, and that day campus was just crawling with students. He put whomever he was talking to on hold and made a quick, "Hey, how are you?" small talk, promising to chat as soon as he was done on his long distance call. I waited as he explained how a friend he had made at orientation, me, had just found him randomly and how weird/cool it was. Then he said my name. Then he made a face. Then he asked me my last name. And once I told him, he repeated it. Then he made another face. Then he asked me if I knew Rose, last name withheld from the story. I stuttered, "Yes." "You met in England?" he asked. I was sort of stunned now. Yes. This was the friend I'd made there, probably my best friend there. He just handed me the phone. She's my girlfriend. Here, she wants to say hello. Way too many coincidences there for comfort. Number 5. I'm one of those people. I'm someone who, for the next 20 years now, see uncomfortably frequent instances of 11/11. Yes, I have since seen that it is a worldwide phenomenon, affecting millions of people. Yes, I saw that they made some dumb horror movies about it. Yes, most if not all the theories about what it could mean are absurd, and I believe none of them. I found an old wristwatch of mine in a box in my closet full of life debris. The watch's batteries had run out and it stopped at exactly 11:11. I sat at Danny's at midnight and finally revealed this oddity of my life to him, which obviously only elicited smirks. He never left the table after I told him, and we were alone. I made sure not to tell him in front of the waiter, lest they too think I was nuts. At the meal's end, he had used the restroom and I had already paid, so I went with him to the bathroom hallway and stopped dead in my tracks, grabbing his coat so he couldn't continue. I just pointed at the wall, which had graffiti all over it. 11/11, 11/11, 11/11, written in a Sharpie everywhere. A few months ago, I cleared out boxes of junk in an old office of mine before selling it. In one box was an alarm clock, which I had bought, that surely had to be out of batteries by now, I thought. And then I remembered the wristwatch. I thought to myself, if I pull this clock out and it says 11/11, then nothing is real. I pulled it out and it was blinking 11/11. And with that, the alarm went off, startling me. And the time just went blank. The batteries were now dead, and it did not work at all anymore. So what does it all mean? Are we in the Matrix? Is this a dream within a dream? I have no clue. Enough incidents have occurred just like that over the last 20 years with witnesses to convince me that I am at least not insane. But what it could even mean is well beyond my ken. I was 19 and had a weird dream that stood out. My brother and I were walking into a Subway restaurant near where I live, and my head hurt and my ear was burning. As I entered, I reached into my pocket and withdrew the cross my father gave me that I wear every day around my neck. Then I woke up. The dream was short and made no sense. A few minutes later, I get into a fight with a guy in our neighborhood. My brother was there with me. Walking away from the scene, we decided to duck into the nearby subway so I can get cleaned up. When I realized the chain I wear on my cross was broken, dangling on either side of my neck. The guy I was fighting had broken it during the fight. The cross was missing. We 180 and go back to the scene and search and find nothing. Back to subway. By now, a headache has started to set in, and during the fight, the guy grabbed my ear, and it was burning. As I stepped into the subway, I remembered that dream, and realized that I was experiencing it in the moment now. And it was at this moment that I reached into my pocket, and there it was, my cross, in the middle of my palm. I have no idea how it got there. It couldn't have fallen in. In fact, it would have made more sense to have been anywhere else. But there it was. When I was a kid in England in primary school, around 1987-ish, a new kid joined the school on a temporary basis for a term. He had an American accent and was ginger. His name was Lee. Before he left us, he brought into school what today would sort of look like a tablet computer. But this was very thin, with brown tan glass. He had cartoons on it. He totally loved cartoons and movies. I swear this happened. I didn't dream it. It was amazing. There was a crowd of kids who saw it, and their reaction was interesting because they liked it and wanted one, comparing it to the Nintendo Game & Watch and calculators, but sort of accepted it and didn't think it was magical, but it certainly was. I said to him, I like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy prop used in the TV series. He didn't know what I meant. He kept it away from the teachers and didn't bring it back in. I kept asking him questions about his calculator TV, and he just gave vague answers and saying he didn't know. But when I asked where he bought it, he said his dad got it from the U.S. One other thing he said, he saw a movie which had every cartoon character ever. A few years later, I realized he was talking about Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which came out soon after. Let's just pause right there, because on June 27th, I was fixing breakfast, and just randomly, Who Framed Roger Rabbit popped into my head, and that how Brandon has never saw that movie, and that I need to let him watch it. So, synchronicity? You decide, because it just popped in my head out of the blue. And here it is in this story. But anyway, here's the story. This was 30 years ago, so you can imagine how difficult in all this time it's been to describe this thing, as we haven't had tablets everywhere. I used to draw diagrams of it to show people. I went crazy when I saw the Tom Hanks movie Big, the scene where he pitches a handheld comic book video device. My parents sort of acknowledged it, just humoring me. When Star Trek The Next Generation came out, and the pad was shown on screen, I went, that's it, that's the thing. Eventually the tablet PC came out, and I remember thinking, finally, at last. The video iPod was further confirmation. Today it's obvious that it was a tablet computer, and my story sounds more convenient. I suppose I could track some of the other kids down on Facebook to prove this. I bet they would remember. Naturally, no one believes me. I believe you, Bugs Nixon. I was in my living room, looking out the window at the street, and I saw my neighbor from a few doors down going down the street on her scooter. She's morbidly obese. My living room has 2 sets of windows separated by a bit of wall. When someone walks by, there's a slight gap when you see them. So I was sitting there. She scoots by the first window. There's a beat, and she never appears out of the other side. I continue watching both windows to see if she comes out or turns around, and completely nothing. I get up and go to the window to see the entire street, and she's completely gone. There was no other places to go, as she was on the sidewalk and couldn't scoot across the grass, and couldn't go onto the street because she would tip over the curb. Her 2 directions were left further up the street, or right back where she came from. She disappeared and was going neither. I even went outside to see if there was somewhere else I could have missed that she could have gone. Nothing. She went past my window and was promptly deleted from existence. Ghost on the Street says, I was sitting in class looking at the clock. Next thing I know, I'm walking through the mall with a woman who I never met before. I was an adult and I knew she was my girlfriend. As we were walking and talking, some guys started shooting people randomly. Before I had a chance to react, I felt something like a punch to my chest. When I looked down, I was standing over my own body with a pool of blood spreading around it. I watched the chaos of the scene unfold in real time. My girlfriend was over my body screaming, and I was trying to comfort her. I watched the police neutralize the shooter, and then the other emergency workers clear the scene. I watched them remove my body. I tried to follow, but I was unable to leave the mall. I lived/haunted the mall for a couple years. As a spirit, I was bored, so I would mess with the security guards during the night shift. During the business hours, I would try to interact with the customers. Every now and then, I could get someone to nod hello or walk around me, so we wouldn't collide. I remember an elderly man sitting on one of the resting benches have a heart attack. As he was standing over his body, I walked over to him to comfort him. I had an overwhelming feeling that it wasn't his time to die, and I told him so. He climbed/sank back into his body as the emergency workers were resuscitating him. One day I was sitting on one of the resting benches, and a young boy, about the age of 6 or 7 years old, sat down next to me. He started talking to me. When he did, I felt something weird happen. I knew I was to leave with him. I became his invisible friend. His name was Brian, and he was an only child of a single mother. She was an abusive alcoholic. I helped him survive life. I taught him not to talk to others about me so they wouldn't think he was crazy. I experienced being with Brian for years. When he was about 10 years old, his mother came home drunk. She went into a drunken tirade and hit Brian. I lost my temper and was able to slam her into the wall. She never hit him again. I watched him grow up to a teenager, and when he was 18, I knew my time with him had come to an end. We said our goodbyes, and just like that, the daydream was over. I looked at the clock, and maybe a minute had passed. I had experienced just short of 2 decades of existence as a ghost in a minute of time. I don't know if this really fits, but I had a psychic moment once. When I was younger, my family and I moved to a new house. We had to stay in a rental house about 2 miles away while they cleared it, then moved all of our furniture in. After a while, we finally got the go-ahead and started packing up. We had 2 dogs then. None died. We just got a third one a couple years ago, but one of them had lost his dog tag. We don't know how. It probably just came loose or something. Well, whenever something goes missing, it would fall on us to try to find the item. I remember all 4 of us kids scrambling and scouring the whole house for it, and even checking the land around the rental. Finally, I just sat down and closed my eyes. I thought about the tag, which was a sapphire blue color. Suddenly, I had a distinct image pop into my head. I knew exactly where it was, and I immediately hopped up and ran to the location. It was right where I envisioned it. The kicker, the location was in the basement, which we didn't often go to because it wasn't really finished. There was a step that divided the lower floor of one half of the basement from the other, and the tag had been kicked or dropped into a small pile of dust bunnies on other floor junk. To this day, I try to channel my inner psychic. I guess it's kind of a glitch. Matrix Bug says, I was waiting for the bus next to a busy road and was starting to feel anxious, so I decided to stand up and walk away 50 feet, and I already felt better, so I started walking back, and on that moment, I saw a truck losing control and demolishing the spot where I was 20 seconds ago. Freaky. Widow Lark says, I was driving home from work one night when I saw lights in my rearview mirror. For some reason, I felt like the car behind me was following me, and I began to feel anxious. The entrance to my neighborhood has two directions once you turn in. I lived on the right, but I decided that I was going to turn left and see where the car behind me went. They also went left. Getting more worried, I decided to take random turns into sub-streets of the neighborhood, and each time the car followed me. Finally, I reached a cul-de-sac at the end of the street, and I pulled over at a random house and turned my lights off. Sure enough, the car behind me turned into the driveway of the house I pulled into. The family inside the car got out of the car, walked up to the house, unlocked the door, and went inside. To this day, I have no idea how that happened. I've kind of had that feeling before too. Felt like people was following me on my way home from work and stuff. I don't know. I guess I'm just paranoid in the time of day that we live in. I don't know. But I've done the same thing. I've turned up into other neighborhoods and stuff like that just to try to see if they would keep following me. And most of the time they don't. But hey, I think that's about all. Thanks for listening. Thanks as always, Jimmy Haunted. If you've got a true scary story and you'd like to be a guest on the show, or if you've got a strange story you'd like to have us read or whatever, send an email to indarkplacespod@hotmail.com. We'll see you again right here next week. God bless.